OK, so to Pete, Keir Starmer has said he will appoint Meghan Markle as British ambassador to Israel if elected so she can lead efforts on the Gaza peace deal. Is it true or is it false? I mean, she's already spread love in the British royal family.
Well, the one thing that really struck me is that she came out and said that there are now 2 racists in the royal family. I saw that headline the other day.
Oh, only 2?
Only 2.
Only 2 this week.
And apparently that she hasn't spoken to Kate in 4 years or something like that. And I was just like, look at Kate.
See, Pete, when she goes, I haven't spoken to him 4 years, you're thinking, there's a reason for that. She won't take your calls.
Kate hasn't spoken to her, not the other way around.
I can't understand why anybody would want to be married into this the poshest dysfunctional family in Britain. I mean, it's very strange.
I don't know, Derek. I mean, my family are fairly bad, right? You know how we sit there and we go, oh, the royal family are really dysfunctional. You think, yeah, but it's just because we read about them. I mean, you wanted to meet some of my relatives. I mean, the way my grandmother looked at that Asian nurse that was trying to look after her, it was a look of hate. Absolute look of hate. Has Meghan Markle been offered the ambassadorial role in Israel? Is it true or is it false?
It's false.
It's absolutely false! The BBC has banned Jewish staff from marching against anti-Semitism. Is it true or is it false?
Well, the BBC has got itself into a really disgraceful position. I mean, it's absolutely failing categorically on every level.
Yes.
And people who otherwise, I grew up with the BBC, people who I otherwise respected are losing, they're throwing my respect away. They're absolutely casting it into the wind. One journalist who reported a false story that caused a riot across the Middle East.
A literal riot?
Yeah, a literal riot.
Yeah.
I'm not, unlike the BBC, I'm not using hyperbole. This actually happened. And then he was asked, do you feel any shame about that? No, I don't feel it. He accepted it was wrong, but didn't feel in any way embarrassed. That's disgraceful.
I'm not one of these people that is obsessively anti-BBC. I mean, what annoys me, I will say, is that the political left, if you like, get their free news service paid for by the taxpayer and then continually want to shut down right-wing channels, right? You think, well, at least we're paying for it ourselves, right? But I will say something about the BBC. In terms of this obsession with supporting the Palestinian cause, where you sat there, I mean, whatever you think about Israel, whatever you think about Palestine, Israel does have a democratically elected government and it is properly run, doesn't get everything right. That you're literally saying, well, Hamas is better than that. No, I'm afraid it's not.
No, it isn't. And I've listened to Radio 4 since I was 12, and this is the first year...
That doesn't surprise me.
This is the first year I've turned it off.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
But you're a lawyer. What's the legal position on the BBC's stated case?
Well, the problem is that the law has got itself into a total mess on this. So there's the 2003 Communication Act, and it's written like toffee. So it's really, really badly written law.
Right.
And as a result, Ofcom doesn't know what it's doing. The BBC doesn't know what it's doing. They don't know what the rules are. So every time something like a Lineker happens, they have to sort of make it up on the spot.
Right.
And it's all, really, that's what mob rule is. So there are no clearly defined boundaries, no clearly defined rules, and they're just falling apart.
Isn't the smart thing for the BBC to do is to have news rather than kind of commentary? Because my own view, and part of the reason that I work for this channel, is that if you want to be an everyman product, right, you can't have an opinion, really, and do it particularly well. But then again, why do they bother? Why not just be factual? They've got the global reach of their news service.
Yeah, they could go back to being impartial. It's really in that word, because lawyers are obsessed about words, and it's that word, impartiality. If they could go back to that, if they could define it again, they don't understand what it means.
No.
Then they could restore themselves.
They're saying that they're being impartial by not calling Hamas terrorists.
Yes.
They said that that's a sign of their impartiality.
But the problem,
which is clearly gibberish. I mean, that's just gibberish.
The problem is with this, and I appreciate everybody here knows this, but for some people who aren't familiar with this topic, Hamas are a terrorist organisation.
Yes,
the reason is it is defined in law what the terrorist organisation is, and it's an organisation prescribed by the Home Secretary. Therefore, what you are doing is denying their actual legal status. I find it bizarre, Derek.
Well, that's true, but also remember history. I'm always, and you're a historian too, I think, always keen that people should remember history. I mean, The IRA was a terrorist organisation. Nelson Mandela was a member of a terrorist organisation that was also outlawed. Leopards can change their spots, So it doesn't mean that they'll always be described as a terrorist organisation, but they certainly are that today.
But also, there's two subjects here, isn't there? There's obviously the Israel element, the anti-Semitism element, but also the BBC. Is there a future for the BBC? Because I've got to be honest with you, it has been a great British institution. It is a projection of power around the world. There is a lot good going on there, but it just seems to just not be able to get it right, Derek.
The BBC is an organisation that all of us should respect and have affection for, but the BBC should not be in the public sector.
Right.
That's it, yeah.
Let me say, amen to that. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Give you a round of applause.
No, you should say praise the Lord.
The one thing that really strikes me about all these kind of incidents is, one, I do think there is a strong anti-Israel bias because all of these editorial mistakes, which is their kind of catch-all phrase,
anti-Semitic as well,
is all trends in one direction. I'd have more respect for the BBC if they kind of got it wrong on both sides.
Across the board.
Because then that shows that, there's flowing news and all the rest of it. If all the mistakes trend in one direction and you say you don't have a problem, I'm sorry, you just sound like an idiot. And more importantly, and I go back to what Stephen said here, is why is nobody being held accountable for these mistakes? What do you actually have to do at the BBC to get fired? I don't understand.
Support Israel.
Yeah, it seems to be the case. Because I wonder, was any of these issues raised when half of the BBC staff went on one of the pro-Palestine marches? I bet there was nothing said then. No. And this is where the BBC gets itself into a real problem. And I do agree with you, it is all of their own making because they don't have actual guidelines, actual rules that govern itself. And until you get a proper director general... I think
that's also synonymous with being in the public sector.
Yeah,
you never know the names of all these people with enormous power that spend vast amounts of public money that are never accountable for it. I mean, HS2 is a very good example.
Yeah.
Who was responsible for signing off all those contracts? We don't know.
Let's leave it there, but I have to say to you, the answer, as you know, is nobody in the end. By the way, as you've all been good, I'll tell you the worst journalistic mistake I ever made. I wrote a story about guerrilla warfare and dictated it over the phone to an intern who got the wrong type of guerrilla.
Boris Johnson.
I described some very swarthy Colombian terrorists as guerrillas.
Oh no!
Anyway,
but that went down well.
I'm not travelling to Bogota. I've got a hitman after me. Anyway, so Stephen, has the BBC banned Jewish staff from protesting against anti-Semitism?
Yes, I think it has.
It's absolutely and unfortunately true.
I'm not clapping that.
No, I'm not clapping that one.
OK, that was a muted response, understandably. OK, so to Derek. The French police chief in charge of stopping illegal migrant channel crossings to Britain has been off work for the last, get this, 14 years.
Oh my God.
What is it for?
So that's why the numbers keep going up. Blame this one poor lad. Why has he been off work for 14 years?
Derek, I've asked you the question. What makes me laugh is...
Oh, no.
Yes, I get that. Well, I agree. It's the University of Oxford. They've recalled the degree. They say, we're not having that tit.
Apparently,
no, stop. What we're going to do, Derek, is we'll just go through the basics. What happens in a quiz is I ask you questions and you come up with the answers.
Oh, God.
What you can't do is...
Can we do a round two?
Start again.
I'll tell you what, Bradley Walsh doesn't have this problem, does he, on the stage? They'll go, oh, do you know the answer, Bradley? No, you answer it. Well, given that Derek has spectacularly failed, Pete, you always read the news. Can you tell me what the answer is? I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll give Derek the points, won't we?
Yeah, we get Derek the points.
There we go.
There we go. I'll do all the hard work and Derek gets the points.
Anyway, I want
a
job swap with this chap.
Yeah, it's good.
No, but this is quite a serious story. So basically, this guy is in charge of kind of one of these, what they call a mobile command unit, and they're there to kind of tackle the migrant issue up in the north of France. And he's basically just been absent.
Is he in charge?
So this is the guy that runs it, and it's basically been left to his deputy, who apparently has had a report about how he's a sexist, a misogynist, a racist, and just generally not a very nice person.
Well, he's French.
But the problem is, we've given the French government £500 million over 3 years to go to one of these, to go to this kind of person who's in charge, and he's not there. So I don't understand what's been happening, because this is a real problem, not just for us, but also for the French as well, because I'd be really annoyed at this.
I've got to be honest with you, I do have some sympathy with the French border guards in the north of France, because they did build a wall round the British lorry park and made Britain pay. Which I have to say, somebody did it in the world. That was quite a good thing. But look, Derek, the reality is the immigration system is a shambles, isn't it? And whilst this is a bad example, it's not really the most egregious thing we've heard, is it?
Not fit for purpose, and it's entirely the British government's fault. It's not the French's fault. It won't be Rwanda's fault either. They don't have any idea how to properly tackle what has become a crisis. And I think it's as well to remember that only 3% of the global population ever move. So actually the numbers are very, very tiny.
Yes.
But the way in which states deal with migration is what causes the crisis.
What I can't understand, Derek, is this. When I was involved in the campaign to defend Ukraine, I was at one of the largest border crossings, and I saw genuine refugees, people for whom it was no doubt were literally the wife and kids were coming to the border. The husband wasn't allowed to leave because of conscription, and they were all devastated, very upset and whatever. It was quite an upsetting scene.
A real situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what I discovered was the genuine refugees want to be as close to their home as they can be whilst being safe. Now, I accept that for some of those people, that was the United Kingdom, but the vast majority of them, it was places like Moldova and Hungary and Poland. This idea of, having a crisis in your country and deciding to go, oh, well, which country should I move to, is extraordinary.
It is. And it's as well to remember, people often use this interchangeably, that there's a difference between a migrant and a refugee. Remember, one is an economic category and the other is politically determined.
Yes.
And the refugee is something that's politically determined. And whenever something is politically determined, it causes problems.
Yes, that's true. Absolutely. OK, so do we believe... I mean, I don't know why I'm asking you this, Derek, but
I'm not a refugee, by the way.
I've only got 10 then.
I'm a refugee from the Conservative Party.
Aren't we all?
It was taken over by communists. Anyway, Derek, has this bloke been on holiday for 14 years?
Well, of course he has. He's French.
It's absolutely true! Conservative MP Lee Anderson has claimed he was offered loads of money to defect to Reform UK. Is it true or is it false?
I hate to break it to people, if you vote for the Reform Party, you're going to get a Labour MP.
Well,
and whether you break the line or not.
No. I'm sorry. I'm going to pull you up, Pete. I love you to bits, despite the introductions, but I'm going to defend them, and I'll tell you why I'm going to defend them. It is very clear now that both major political parties have been taken over by people who have got no interest in their actual voters. The Labour Party is obsessed with middle-class trans issues and all this. The Conservative Party isn't talking about genuine conservatism. Given that Labour are going to win the next election anyway, my argument is, rather than Conservatives stay at home, they should vote for somebody and then register that they are important and they need to be listened to.
I understand that argument, but in reality, we still have to see how well the Labour Party are really going to do. But we look at some of the by-elections. With the Reform Party cost the Conservative Party a general election because they split the vote.
But the Conservative Party is exactly the same as the Labour Party.
I know people keep saying this, but on a fundamental level, they're not really.
They're both globalists. They're both globalists.
So is Reform, if we're being brutally honest.
Do you know what I always think? If you're in the pub and somebody says they're all globalists, it's time to get a cab. But anyway, on a serious note, has Lee Anderson been asked to join Reform UK? Is it true or is it false?
Yeah, I knew about this ages ago, Yeah, it's true.
She's inside this. It's absolutely true! OK, now for the scores.
Oh, no.
It's the Woke Wabbit!
Oh!
No, don't touch me. Don't touch me. So are you concerned about Lee Anderson's opposition to net zero?
Well, I mean, I've already been affected by climate change. I've got a climate change illness.
Go on.
I've got a cold.
Surely you'd have a warm.
No, look, it's got colder, the climate has changed, and now I'm ill. I'm just saying.
What are the scores?
Derek's winning 1-0.
Thank you so much. Woke Wabbit. So, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, Derek, who didn't actually even answer his own, has now managed to win. Derek, I'm sorry to say, we've never raised this before, but I think you might have been victim of positive discrimination. what was it?
I get some positive discrimination.
We'll do it next round. Okay. So on to Pete.
Yeah.
Viewers are threatening to boycott the woke BBC after Doctor Who was told off by a transgender character for assuming the pronouns of a non-binary alien.
God.
And I have to say, I appreciate this is not from Doctor Who, but beam me up, Scotty.
Yeah, I know, yeah. I saw this outrage on Twitter. I think it was on Saturday, when Doctor Who made its comeback for the new season or whatever. David Tennant's back. And isn't it really funny? David Tennant's back. David Cameron's back in office. It's like we've gone back about 10 years. But, I have to admit, my thing with a lot of I watch a lot of TV and films, I have to admit. And my thing is, I try to put the woke stuff to one side. But my problem with the BBC stuff is that's all there is to these stories. That's all there is to the drama. Some of the stuff that you can have woke storylines by all means, but you've got to have interesting characters. You've got to have interesting storylines to keep me engaged. If it's just giving me a political lecture by an alien dressed up in cheap makeup, then I'm sorry, I'm not interested in it.
Funnily enough, I don't watch EastEnders. But, it's now got very few viewers compared to what it used to have.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I assume it is torturously talking down to you.
Well, yeah, and there was, I don't know if people saw this on Twitter the other day, there was a TV show called Doctors, which is like a daytime soap.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently there was a furry in it. And I will leave viewers at home to Google what a furry is. And there was this was the whole...
Tell us, Pete, what's a furry?
I'm not explaining that on national television. My mother watches this. And,
Sorry, can we just stop? So, first of all...
That's my mother.
It's a furry.
Oh, my God, it's Mrs. Barnes! Mrs. Barnes says she loves a fairy. She often sticks one on the Christmas tree.
Furry, not a fairy.
Oh, furry.
Furry.
And fairy.
Yeah, so basically, and this was the entire point of it. It's just, my problem of a lot of what the BBC does is it's just pushing an agenda and kind of forgetting that you've got to entertain people.
Yeah.
And this is why people are switching off from it.
By the way, EastEnders has lost 90% of its viewers,
It's 90%.
which is
Surprised.
unbelievable.
Wow.
Anyway, given that I don't know the difference between a furry and a furry, why don't we bring on the furry creature that is the woke wabbit?
Hey.
Come on, woke wabbit.
What about a furry fairy?
Right, I don't even want to know the answer to this, but I'm contractually obliged to ask you, what is a furry?
It's cultural appropriation is what it is. It's people pretending to be animals when they're not actually those animals.
Oh, well, that is disgusting. We should stop that right away. Now, sod off.
I'm sorry about this, Stephen. I did tell you it's quite a high-end show.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know
Are you a virgin to this show?
No, second time.
No, this is my second time on it. But,
Do you know what, Stephen? I will say one thing about you. You've nailed the look that Meatloaf dreamed of. You've got it.
Oh, well, no, I'd say Oscar Wilde again. Oscar Wilde, definitely.
well, I do anything for love.
No.
Obviously not.
There we
We
go.
won't do this again.
Don't say that on this show.
OK, so are people threatening to boycott Doctor Who over transgendered characters?
They are. It's true.
It's absolutely true!
Good.
That was The Woke That Was. Continues after the break.
On the 12th day of Wokemas, my true love sent to me 12 strikers striking 11, vegans munching 10, blacks protesting 9, Biden sleeping 8, cops are dancing 7, Greta's crying 6,000 genders. The BBC, 4 Twitter trolls, 3 PMs, 2 hypocrites, and a Meghan documentary.
Welcome back to That Was The Woke That Was.
Rishi Sunak is considering legislation to ban David Cameron from starting any more referendums. Is it true or is it false?
Most unlikely he's not got an idea in his head.
I don't think it was David Cameron's idea to have a referendum. I mean, it was, because of how Brexit, and I have no public position on Brexit, so I find it much easier to talk about than I think a lot of people do. I have no...
Do you have a private position?
No, I don't
of any description?
Because of my job, I don't generally let my feelings impact me in any sort of way.
And in private?
No, I'm very boring in private too, but boring in public, boring in private. I like to be consistent. Law is consistent.
So really, you're just the rubbish Meatloaf.
I'm not as fun as Meatloaf. But, it wasn't David Cameron's idea. He was bounced into it. He had to put it in the manifesto if he was going to stand a chance of winning. The people wanted a vote.
They did.
And that
Oh, no, I don't agree about that.
They are...
The people never know what they want. So, I mean, let's
It's democracy in action again, Derek.
I mean, have you ever heard of consulting the frogs before you drain the marshes? I
I just think we shouldn't be racist. He wasn't. I'm sorry, Derek, I misunderstood that. But look, one question that I keep asking people, and I'll ask everybody round here, because I've got my own view on it. I don't see any problem with bringing back David Cameron. I think that having somebody as Home Secretary as a former Prime Minister is not a particularly bad idea. I don't particularly like Cameron, but I don't have a problem with it, Derek. Do you?
Absolutely not. I was saying only the other day on a very respectable channel.
I'm sorry. Are we having that? We're actually going to accept that, are we? Like, this is the man who couldn't even answer his own question. It's not he couldn't answer his own question. He didn't even know that in the quiz you had to answer a question.
Oh, no.
Well, you're right. For 50 quid, you can't get much better. I'm lying. We didn't pay him 50 quid. Didn't pay you anything at all, did we, Derek? Because basically, when you're scraping the barrel, Yeah.
Oh,
No,
my friend.
We were saying, actually, only moments ago, that the thing about being a Conservative, it's that it's always been a very pragmatic party.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's never been an ideological party. And Cameron is par excellence pragmatic.
Yeah, that's very true. And the one thing that I'm a little sick and tired of when it comes to the Brexit stuff is we've got to let it go.
Yes.
It was years ago now, and I am a little sick and tired of saying, oh, he was a Remainer and she was a Brexiteer, and he did this, and I was like, just let it go. Our politics is strangled by Brexit.
One of the worst ideas I've ever heard. It was quite amusing. I had a friend of mine, and he said, right, what I want to do is, I'm not joking, he said, I want to set up a website where you can search your postcode and discover whether your local representatives were pro-European in the referendum. He said, I've registered, get this, the Brex Offenders Register. I said, you cannot launch the Brex Offenders Register.
Can I just say something about David Cameron, though? You say, he's pragmatic and everything. But, yeah, he was so pragmatic that he didn't immediately take his seat in the Lords, like he really should have done, and was able to make fortunes and lose fortunes and get involved in some very dodgy deals, and then make all that money and then come back into the Lords. I don't know. I don't think that that's right.
I have to admit that bringing him back has been messy. It has been messy.
He should have gone straight in.
And the thing that I find interesting was the reason he was brought back, apparently, was to free Rishi up to deal with more domestic issues. Because Cameron is obviously an old hand, he's got the personal relationships and everything.
He's propping him up, let's be honest. It's like Mandelson and Brown.
Yeah,
He's coming to prop him up.
Yeah, I do think you're right on that for 100%. But I just like the idea that Rishi Sunak is now going to concentrate on domestic issues. But I believe that when I see it.
I tell you what we should do. We should do what I used to do when I worked in the European Parliament and we got an intern and it wasn't very good. We used to go, right, we've got some visitors coming next week. Can you go on all the bus tours of Brussels and write a report on it? We should do that with Sunak. But anyway, okay. Yeah. What you've got to do is tour the world, Rishi, to discover what other best practices going on. Anyway, so has David Cameron been banned from having any more referendums? Is it true or is it false?
I think that's false.
It's absolutely false! And that is from our friends at the Upper Lip website. Great website, really worth checking out. OK, on to Derek. Gary Lineker has sparked an impartiality row. Why am I even reading the rest of it? It's absolutely true. OK, Gary Lineker has sparked an impartiality row after tweeting a video accusing Israel of textbook genocide. I have to say, I think he's gone too far this time, hasn't he?
Like lots of my friends, sometimes they say silly things. And I think this might be another example of one of my friends saying something that's extremely silly and also probably rather offensive.
I get the impression. That he's actually not a bad guy, he's got very, very, very upset. It's like, I'm not being funny, I've got elderly relatives, I'm sure we all have, who have been radicalised by social media. I mean, some of the absolute hate and bile I get on WhatsApp nowadays is unbelievable. But there are people who literally have engaged with social media and just become extremely upset about a variety of issues. And I just feel feel like he's not sitting there having a go at people. He's sat there going every night.
But I think he's making his reputation not by being a football commentator, but by being a political commentator. Yeah. And actually, I mean, the very people that have spent too much time taking too much notice of him have actually given him a platform.
But funnily enough, he used to live relatively near me, and people locally, and I don't know if this is true,
in Surrey or Leicester.
In Surrey, and they said that he was believed to be a Conservative voter. And I believe that's probably true. Because if you notice, he just exploded onto the scene when Brexit happened. And actually, prior to that, had been quite a measured and Conservative-y type person.
Yeah, I think when he was married to Shelley, he probably was more sympathetic to the Conservative Party than he is now. Well, I don't think there's anybody left now that's sympathetic.
He's probably more sympathetic to Adolf Hitler. I mean, it's fair to say, of a list of people who are not keen on the Conservative Party, I think Gary Lineker's relatively high up. He's just been defeated by Keir Starmer.
Some of the stuff that he's said, though, is not just silly, it's extraordinarily offensive, isn't it? You know, making comparisons to things in Nazi Germany, but they're not when people are actually protesting on the street saying, kill all the Jews. That's fine.
But strangely enough, and I think this is a phenomenon that we're now living with because of social media, that, you know, you have to be really offensive to be noticed. You can't argue and actually say that things are more shades of grey than they are black and white and get a hearing. But you have to take the most absurdly extreme positions.
I've got to say to you, I'll come to Stephen in a second. I've got to say to you, on the way here today, on the train, a young black guy who's a journalist stopped me and lamented the behaviour of Mizzy and said, you were great to throw him out of the studio. And he said, because what really annoys me nowadays, and he said it's right across the whole country, particularly in the black community, there's this idea where, you know, just say the most offensive thing, just do the most ridiculous thing, don't have a job, shout abuse at people on TikTok, and that's the people who are being venerated nowadays. And I think it's a real worry.
It is a real worry, you know, and I don't know what we do about it, but it's a very, very troubling sign. And it is going to affect the younger generation coming through, that they think that the way in which to be heard is to be offensive.
And Stephen?
Well, we have a problem at the moment because, and we just have to talk about this honestly, Hamas is putting out propaganda. And if you deal with that in a non-critical way, so if you simply absorb...
Yeah, of course it is. They put out propaganda.
What's happening is that there is not a critical filter being applied to what Hamas is saying. No. Even the BBC is simply taking Hamas's statements as true. And Owen Jones. And if you do this, well, then you will end up radicalised. You will end up terribly angry because that's what the propaganda is designed to do.
But one thing that is genuinely worrying, look, you know, you write for The Spectator, you're a barrister. This is a relative... I mean, we make jokes about each other, but this is a relatively sophisticated audience. The number of times that I've seen footage of something that turns out to simply not be what it's presented as. Well, and I just, you know, I know that there are people who try and do this fact-checking, but it doesn't work as well as it could.
No, it doesn't. And the only answer is for people to have a critical filter themselves.
Yes.
We must teach young people how to be critical.
And that's what Derek does.
I do.
Well, you're a critical filter?
No, he is a good...
How does that work in practice?
But he teaches young people to actually look at both sides of the argument because that's been taken out of schooling. And you actually do.
It's a Oxford or Oxbridge model to be appropriate, and we try and teach children from a very early age that critical thinking is the way in which you reach the best conclusions.
But Pete, is it going to work?
I'm
not being critical specific of that. No, I'm not being critical specifically.
It's something that we should have nationwide. Yeah. I completely agree with you. But I just want to pick up on what Stephen said about this. The actual video that was retweeted. It was an interview that Owen Jones, the Guardian journalist, did with a professor called, I think it's Raz Segal, who's a very controversial figure. Very controversial. He said that Jews had to stop weaponising the Holocaust. That was an actual article in the Guardian. So I think what concerned me the most is that Gary Lineker didn't bother to actually look up any of what he retweeted.
No,
and I think that's the thing. When people have these big platforms, they have to actually be careful about what sharing.
But Pete, and I'm going to say this again because I think we've got to start with some home truths. how many times have you read the article that you've retweeted? Because I'm going to be honest, I now get those little alerts sometimes where it says, are you going to retweet this?
Yeah.
You haven't read it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I actually think what it should do, particularly on Twitter, is actually say whether you've actually have or not. I think that would be a good thing to add.
Yeah, but I think it was pretty clear, sorry to interrupt, but from the description, what the tone and everything
exactly.
was of it.
On that I completely agree.
Yeah.
But, I mean, can we just talk about Owen Jones just for 1 second?
No.
I mean...
You just want to say the word. You just want to say the word homosexual, don't you?
No, because I saw this brilliant...
I know, it's because you're not gay, right? You're not gay. You don't understand because you're not gay. You're not gay. That was Owen Jones saying that Julia Hartley-Brill was not gay. Which, to be fair, is a factually accurate statement, which he did make on Sky once.
Just in all seriousness, I mean, this man has gone so far off the reservation, even further than I thought possible. I mean, I saw this great tweet the other day that said... he's going to get to that point where Hamas is going to have to disavow itself from Owen Jones. That it's got that bad. And I think what Stephen said again about this kind of propaganda war that's actually going on online, I see it all the time on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. People sharing this stuff, and I'm like, you don't understand what any of this actually means.
But isn't part of the problem with somebody like, well, maybe it's not a problem, but one of the things with Owen Jones, you've described him as a Guardian journalist. He's a propagandist.
Yes.
In reality. I made a joke about his argument with Julia Hartley-Brill, but let's just remind ourselves why he got so upset and left the studio. The reason was somebody had gone into a gay nightclub in America shouting Allah Akbar and machine gunning the customers, and Owen Jones was advancing the theory that this was the result of homophobia in America, not terrorism. Right? And the reason for that is because the uncontrolled immigration that is causing this terrorism is something that Owen Jones is so ideologically committed to that he's unwilling to admit that's a terrorist attack.
This is always a big problem with the kind of entrenched political left, is they can't acknowledge that they've been treading water and carrying water, for the worst kind of people for so long that when they're suddenly confronted with the realities of what these people are actually like, they can't deal with it.
Well, they go into denial, and there's, inherent contradictions in all of the extreme left's arguments. A perfect example is LGBTQ for Palestine.
Exactly.
There's so many things like that.
I will say one thing, and we don't want to talk about Queers for Palestine because they're such a small organisation, but I have to say, they're just making a mockery of themselves doing that. But anyway, Derek, Gary Lineker, do we believe that he has said that Israel is guilty of textbook genocide?
I know him too well. Yes, he
It's
did.
absolutely true! Love the way Derek's getting into it. Love the way he's getting into it. He used to be a relatively serious figure, but we can get you there, Derek. Don't worry. Barkleys Bank, sorry, to Lois. Barkleys Bank had to close 50 branches on Monday after their doors were superglued closed by Extinction Rebellion. Is it true or is it false?
Oh, my God. Well, the thing is, if it is true, don't worry, because even if people have seen videos of it, the police, there's 100 witnesses, they still will be found not guilty. That sounds like Extinction Rebellion.
Do you know what we should have said to them? To the Extinction Rebellion, who presumably are animal libbers as well. You know that's made of a horse. That would have got them going.
Well, they should actually try and find some arguments that stick.
And you know what? And you told me that he wasn't as good as Davro.
I didn't say that.
Definitely is.
But Extinction Rebellion, all of these groups, Just Stop Oil, they're all so extraordinarily well funded, and they're funded by their own admission from, getting money and oil money. So, they know that they can get. Maybe it's because they don't bank with Barclays. Maybe that's the problem.
No, you can't have pork balls, crispy wontons and chow mein. Why are they... this is not the Green Lotus takeaway. My God. How has that just happened? Oh, can we change the phone number of this bloody phone? No, okay. Has Barclays Bank shut 50 branches because the doors were glued shut? Is it true or is it false?
I'd say it's got to be true.
It's absolutely true!
That was The Woke That Was. Continues after the break. Welcome back to That Was The Woke That Was.
So, Pete, ISIS bride Shamima Begum has been signed up by ITV to do the next series of Dancing on Ice. Is it true or is it false? Oh, can I tell you, the BBC has venerated this woman and I think she's awful, but please let this be true. Please let it be true.
Do you know, I'm actually with you on this. I kind of want this to be true. But, well, like, this is the problem with this show, isn't it? Eventually it will become true. But I have to admit, I don't think this is true. But, I mean, when we talk about Shamima Begum, I think it was about a month ago now, she was up at the Court of Appeal to do with her citizenship. I think it was literally just last month. And we're just waiting on the judgment over that. So I do have to admit, we have a real problem in this country about how to deal with people who have been part of ISIS or any kind of terrorist organisation and they returned back to the UK. She's not a new problem. And that's what's always annoyed me about this story, is that people think that she's the first one. She's not. And we've kind of kicked this issue into the long grass for so long that we've made a complete mess of it.
I'll be honest with you. I'm just going to say this. I'm just going to throw it out there. I preferred the baseball cap look. But look, I'll tell you one thing that we did do that I thought was quite funny, right, was when she was going, oh, look, I'm in this refugee camp, it's terrible. And the Foreign Secretary said, well...
Which Foreign Secretary?
Depends what week it was.
It was some time ago, but I loved the comment. Had you consulted the Foreign Office website, you would discover we don't offer consular services in either Syria or Iraq. This is genuinely true. You are able, however, to go to the nearest consulate, and it was in Istanbul, which was about 800 miles. So they suggested that she walked to the nearest consulate,
my Lord.
which would have been made doubly difficult because she would have had to go through the Peshmerga line and illegally enter Turkey. Oh, I don't think that was going to happen, though, was it?
No.
By the way, also, I'm contractually obliged to say the following thing: Dancing on ISIS.
No.
I mean, that's the standard, isn't it, Lois?
Yeah.
But on a serious note about Shamima, I have to say, I do find it despicable the way that people on the political left are turning her into some sort of hero.
Well, it's very strange because this is what we were saying about conflicting ideologies on the extreme left. You know, on the one hand, they say that, oh, she was only 14, 15 when she was groomed. She wasn't old enough to make her own decisions. And there is a certain part of me that has some sympathy with that because when you're 14, you think you're really grown up, but you're not. But then conversely, they'd say something like, oh, but you can make a decision about taking hormones to change your gender at the same age. How does that work?
I thought my example of that is that she is the same age as Greta Thunberg. And they sat round going, this girl is too immature to work out what she's doing. Whereas this one, what you need to do is completely alter your economic system, completely alter your democratic system based on what she's got to say.
Well, she was a child actress, you know, and her parents are both not neo-Marxists, they're proper, you know, dyed-in-the-wool Marxists.
I will tell you something else, Lois. If I don't have a daughter, but if I did, and she came to me and said, Dad, I can't go into school because I believe planes flying over are gassing me, I would not allow her to launch a campaign to ban the planes. Because actually, I would turn that to be child abuse.
Should we cancel having that baby together now?
How dare you? How dare you? You've stolen my childhood. How dare you? That was Greta's Berghaus jacket, which to be fair, she looked good in.
I think we do
made using oil.
We do have to talk about when it's Shamima, about the security implications, because this was the main argument that the government put forward as to why they stripped her of her citizenship. And I think you go back to what I think it was called like Agent C or something like that, because obviously he worked for MI5, so they don't publicly name them. And he said it is beyond a shadow of a doubt that she knew what organisation she was joining. Yeah. And I think that was always the big thing at the High Court.
Pete, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Shamima Begum's problem is not that she has had a conversion. The problem is her terrorist organisation was defeated. Yeah. That is the problem that she got.
Her husband was killed, was he?
Yeah, and now what she wants to do, now her terrorist organisation, which beheaded people who had done nothing wrong, and by the way, even if they had done something wrong, beheading them would have been offensive. Yeah. But they're sticking the heads of people on spikes, and what she wants to do, now she's been defeated, is to sit on the bloody social for the rest of her life in a council flat paid for by me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you put
it No, I'm sorry, Derek. I've got this job in telly now. I looked at my tax bill, right, and I will tell you, there are far too many fatties sitting on my money. Okay, well, I mean, if I did pay the tax, right? Okay, fine. Okay, that was Panama saying it wants its papers back.
Can I make a point about Miss Shamima? So not only her father was on one of those hate pro-Hamas marches, but also the school where she went. They said, "We can't understand why she went the way she did." The school, all the kids came out, didn't they, in support of Hamas and anti-Israel, and they all had the day off school.
Yeah,
recently.
This is the thing, isn't it? We have to start to wonder because it's the prevent program, isn't it, that the government have to, so you can identify people who.
The only thing that ever prevented was a tax cut.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think we have to start asking, well, what is that fit for purpose, and how did she fall through that net? Because surely, if somebody who's that radicalised is going to join a terrorist organisation, somebody should have noticed something.
I have to say to you, I thought the prevent programme was grotesque. Basically, what they said was, we will pay all of these people who are extremists just as long as they say they're not violent extremists.
Yeah.
So basically, you can advocate throwing gay people off buildings, but what you do is you just say, no, but we agreed democratically, of course. Yeah. And then the government goes, there's your sack of money.
Yeah, exactly.
That's going to de-radicalise these.
I think it was a bit of a gravy chain for lots of organisations. I mean, there's one organisation, I'm not going to name them, but they made personal fortunes out of it.
There were people who were very supportive of a genocide and terrorism who suddenly became big supporters of moderation and got a Bentley. Anyway, in my ear they're saying, keep it light, son. Okay, so has Shamima, please be true, has Shamima Begum been signed up by ITV to star in Dancing on Ice?
It might be the other thing to make me watch it, but no, she's not. It's false.
It's absolutely false!
Hey.
OK, so we're just going to change the format ever so slightly in the show because I've read the following question about 15 times and I cannot pronounce the name of the person. So, Pete, this is your moment.
Oh, no.
Here we go.
Come on, Pete.
Oh, God, no.
Now, by the way, Pete in the pub the other night was going on and on and on about he wanted his slot at presenting. There you go.
Oh, God.
In fact, no, come on, get the seat. Get the seat. Come on, Pete. Come on, Pete.
And
which one are we doing?
So, Helo Gabus.
Helo Gabus. Right, OK. So, Stephen. A museum in Hertfordshire has relabelled its display about a Roman emperor after concluding he was a trans woman. Emperor Helo Gabus from 218 AD will now be given she, her pronouns. Is it true or false?
So...
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I can read.
We should celebrate that event.
Don't worry, we'll edit that
out. Sorry, you've got...
We'll edit that out.
Sorry, Steve.
So this is something that keeps happening to Roman history, which is mildly irritating. They do it with another emperor. They keep, because he was born in a province called Africa Proconsularis, they keep trying to say that he had black skin. And the fact is that nobody knows because the Romans didn't care, because the Romans weren't racist. And what all of these identity-obsessed people are doing is really importing racism whilst sort of vociferously pretending to not be racist.
But I heard that this emperor set up a brothel in the palace and was the sex worker.
Well, now you get...
No, I'm not joking.
What, for free?
What you do... So they don't care about identity politics, but they do often care about really slamming their predecessor. So they will write things that are scandalous about the dead emperor.
Okay.
They never write anything scandalous about a living emperor, but if the minute an emperor is dead, they will throw anything at them. This one was particularly odd. He's the start of really monotheism in Rome. He's the idea that he wanted to be the solar deity. So he changed his name to Helo Gabus, and he was to be worshipped as a god and an emperor.
I've had boyfriends like that.
Well, so they don't sound fun, Lois. But fundamentally, why are we taking our identity politics and our modern obsessions back into Roman history and doing this when we don't need to do this?
One thing I find is, Derek, I wanted to ask you about this, is because I know you're a man of history. Why do you think people are so obsessed with this kind of rewriting of history that, you know, it's all we ever seem to talk about on this show is the rewriting of history?
I don't think they are really obsessed with rewriting history. I think the problem is they didn't know history to begin with.
Yeah.
So they therefore think that they can sort of contemporarise, their narratives, which leads to enormous problems. Because as I often said on this programme before, if you're going to try and build a better future, you have to know something about the past.
Yes,
yeah, that's
absolutely.
very true. But Lois, I was going to say on this. I'm getting used to this. It's quite comfy sitting here. The thing I find quite interesting about this is, obviously, it's always the
I'm
trans stuff.
devastated. He's doing all right.
It's slowly seething.
Yeah, I know, yeah. But no, if you don't notice...
I used to be a contender.
He was the future once.
I used to be a contender.
But no, have you noticed, it's always the trans stuff on this stuff, isn't it? It's always trans. It's never anything else. But, you know, we just seem to be obsessed with it.
Well, there's that thing, isn't it? The squeakiest wheel gets the oil. Yeah. And, you know, I'm not saying that trans women are squeaky. Maybe they are. But, you know, it's about... I honestly believe that a lot of these things are divide and conquer. Yeah. And little bombs and little things have been set off all over the place to distract us from all of our fundamental rights and everything, like, being eroded away. Mm. Like we said earlier on, almost having one uni party where Labour and Conservatives are so similar. Meanwhile, we're distracted. Oh, no. The girl has spoken too much.
No, hang on a second. It's
he's getting that.
I got too comfy. I got a little too comfortable.
He's gone too far.
14 years later, he's still there.
Well, that was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever. Yeah, absolutely. Right, Pete, I think what the producer's saying is it was a very poor effort. It was a very poor effort. And wow. they just felt that...
Oh,
I was very impressed to see with that.
A round of applause.
I didn't seem patronising at all.
No, I have to say, Pete, we have now... Well, Pete's going to publish a book called Spur. OK, so I will say one thing. I have never struggled more with reading out a question than I did. The sweat was pouring off me. But anyway... Right, here we go. Has a museum in Hertfordshire relabelled a display about the Emperor Helo Gabus, whatever it is called, to say he was trans? Is it true or is it false?
I think it's true.
It's absolutely true.
That was painful.
God bless Helo Gabus.
Helo Gabus.
Helo Gabus sounds like some sort of Spanish tourist resort. Anyway, that is the end of the show, so it's time to get the final scores from the Woke Wabbit. And I have to say, if there's any justice in the world, the person that took over presenting ought to win for once. Who has won the competition today?
Pete, I think, has won.
I have to say, given the presenting effort, congratulations to Pete Barnes. Thank you so much to Stephen Barrett, Derek Lord, and of course, the wonderful Lois Perry. I'm off now to find Helo Gabus.